Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring Legacy of the Cage, the Gauntlet. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this dice-powered mixed martial arts action fighting game, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about actions. Each fighter takes exactly one action per segment. There are 8 actions a fighter may take in a fight. You have strike, takedown attempt, submission attempt, escape, reversal, evade, taunt, and stand up. You have abbreviations to facilitate the understanding of how these actions are carried out. These abbreviations also work as keys when you play solo. We will talk about the solo system in a future part, of course. Actions represent combat moves or attempts at holds and other maneuvers. Stringing together a series of strategic actions results in a higher match score, better positioning, and more opportunities for knockout or submission. The position of the fight determines which actions are legal in a given segment. Think of the action you take during a segment as your primary strategy for that segment. If you choose to strike, you might have to also defend against a takedown attempt or dodge some incoming strikes yourself. But your primary focus is to land as many significant strikes as possible before moving on to the next segment. When you play against a human opponent, you declare your actions privately and reveal them simultaneously. For example, you could do this by keeping a d8 hidden in your hand and just setting it to a number, and then you both reveal the numbers at the same time. When you are playing the solo mode, the Gauntlet, choose your action prior to rolling a d8 for your opponent's action choice. Let's talk about action checks. At the beginning of a segment, after both fighters have declared an action and following the priority check, it's time to make an action check. There are 6 steps to follow in order to accomplish this. 1. You check the target odds for the chosen action. 2. Apply any necessary modifiers to the check, for example, a penalty imposed by an injury. 3. You roll your d100. 4. If the result is higher than the target percentage, your action fails. 5. If the result is equal to or below the target percentage, your action succeeds. And 6. If the result is equal to or below the critical target for the current round, your action is a critical success. Of course, these steps or guidelines will become easier to follow as you become more experienced. They won't feel like steps at all when you gain more practice. When it comes to critical successes, if your action check results in a critical success, certain things happen depending on which kind of check you rolled. In the case of priority, you may steal priority with your critical success if the fighter with the higher speed does not also critical on the priority check. In the case of critical strike, this is a potential match-ending action. Your opponent must make a hard check to avoid being knocked out and losing the fight. In the case of critical submission, a critical submission is a potential match-ending action as well. Like the critical strike, your opponent must make a hard check to avoid being submitted and losing the fight. When it comes to critical takedown attempt, a critical takedown results in your takedown automatically succeeding and transitioning to the ground, even if your opponent also rolled a successful takedown attempt check this segment. Concerning critical taunt, when you roll a critical taunt success, you earn a bonus to your next action check, and your opponent may not use the evade action in the following segment. Concerning critical evade, if you critically succeed on your evade action check, your opponent must roll his next action at a penalty. Concerning double criticals, in cases where both fighters rolled critical results on potentially offsetting actions, for example when both fighters roll critical takedown attempt checks or priority checks, the fighter with the lower critical roll wins. Both fighters are considered to have rolled successful checks and earn match points as normal. Let's talk about strikes. When a fighter takes the strike action, he uses his striking stat to determine if his blows landed. To determine the target odds for a strike check, subtract the opponent's striking stat from the striker's stat as hinted at earlier in this review. In the other parts, on a failed check, no match points are awarded and no further checks or damage occur. When it comes to striking from the bottom, striking happens in all positions in a cage fight. Legacy of the Cage is no different. When the fight is on the ground, the fighter on top can strike the opponent on bottom as well. However, the opponent on the ground can also strike back up at the opponent in the top position. When a strike comes from below, that fighter must apply a penalty to the striking check. This reflects the compromised position from which that combatant is fighting. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part, we are going to take a look at the other actions because I want to examine them in greater detail. As a martial artist, let me give you my opinion on this system. This is a great way to streamline the intricacies and nuances when transitioning from standing to ground fighting. There are several moves that work just as well when you are fighting from a standing position or on top of your opponent or when the opponent is over you, but several others are cancelled. They are useless. You cannot employ them in certain positions. There are penalties applied to such situations. So keeping that in mind, I think that this game does a great job at simplifying the striking exchange between you and your opponent. You have to keep in mind that the position that you are taking now is going to determine what you are going to be doing in less than a few seconds later. You are thinking all of that in an instant and then acting. You are thinking at the speed of light, it feels like that, and then you act immediately. So when it comes to Legacy of the Cage, the simple rolls will allow quick striking exchanges that could transition immediately to a takedown situation. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.